Tony Bowen and welcome to my Corn Country Rails. In this video I'm going to show you how I make my Candytuft trees for my layout using basic simple Candytuft, floral tape, basil paint that you can get at a local hobby store like Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and then obviously some woodland scenic foliage if you want to kind of flock them a little bit. So stick with me and I'll show you how I make my Candytuft trees for my layout.
I start with a bundle of Candytuft. I used to buy this at Michael's or at Hobby Lobby, and I always go for the blonde. Unfortunately, during the seasons, they change the color to purples or reds or that. They don't work as well. The blonde is what you want to have. When I can't find it at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, I went to the internet and found it through a place called the Wreath Palace. It was great stuff. The price was great. The only thing was you had to buy it by the case as opposed to the bundle. Now a case was about $140. That was pretty steep. However, with some other railroad friends, we went in and divided the cost 3 ways, and we each took what we needed for our railroads. Thing with the Candytuft is you want to pull off all those large leaves off the stems. All you want to have are the small stems and the little tufts that have where the flowers would be on it in the spring when they naturally bloom. That's the part you want. The other nice thing about the Candytuft is it already comes treated in glycerin, so it is ready to use. For myself, I usually break off about 3 stems that have a lot of foliage on the top. I'll group these 3 foliage pieces together, and then I will start wrapping them with the floral tape. Since I use the brown floral tape, I usually don't do any kind of touch-up or paint work on the trunk. I plant them as is. However, you always have that option that if it is going to be really close to where people are going to see it, or it's a keynote scene of your railroad, by all means, the floral tape will take paint and that, and so you could paint up the trunks either a brown or a UP gray, something like that, that would represent that tree trunk color. As you build more and more trees, you can get rather quick at them. Myself, I take a piece of styrofoam, and as soon as I have one done, I stick it right in there and I continue to keep building them. And so this is a great process. They're really easy to tuck up out of the way once you have several built. I can get anywhere from about 50 to 75 trees built from a bundle of Candytuft. When I first started building trees, I was getting out my airbrush and compressor and trying to find the right color, and that worked out great. But after attending a clinic, I found somebody who had said they used just the basic floral basil color as their base coat for trees. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And trust me, this worked out great. They're about $7 a can. I can get about 40 to 45 trees done with a can of paint, and you just don't have the hassle with the airbrush and that. And so I would recommend the rattled can of the basil floral paint is a wonderful base color if you're doing summertime trees. There's all sorts of other paints if you're doing fall, late fall. So I would highly recommend going this route as opposed to messing around with the airbrush. Here's just a small section of some of the trees I painted with the basil. The nice thing is with the blonde Candytuft underneath, sometimes you get some light areas shining through where the paint isn't as heavy. And I like that because then all the trees don't have that uniformity look to them.
Alright, here is one of my typical Candytuft trees. I wrap it in brown floral tape. And as you can see, it's an okay tree. It's got foliage kind of all over the place, and you have to think about, like a tree, if this is a tree that is not in a lawn or a yard that's going to be, trimmed and groomed and branches cut off, But if we're talking a tree out in the wild, out in the forest, it's going to have limbs going all over the place. And so when I'm building trees, I have to think, okay, is this in a residential area where these trees are all going to look pretty well groomed, manicured and that? Or is this a tree that's going to be out in the rural area where it's not going to ever have any kind of pruning or anything done unless it's an act of God by nature of, you know, windstorms and things of that nature. So here's the tree as it starts. And now here's that same tree. And yeah, the limbs on it are green, but think about it. If it's a background type tree and kind of being clustered in that green on the limbs is not going to be as noticeable as you might think. And then of course I just shoot the top just kind of sporadically, and sometimes there's areas that are a little darker. Some areas where the candy tuft doesn't get as covered as much, it shows a little bit lighter. And otherwise, leaving the stem nice and long, so whether it's going through either plaster cloth or the styrofoam, I can make a hole, put a little dab of Elmer's glue in there, and then plant it. If the stem is too long, I can always just come with a pair of scissors of that, cut it for the height. But I like to have a little bit longer stem on them, so when I'm painting, I'm not getting it all over my glove as much as I could be. All right, so there's one tree, and then I'll demonstrate how I basically paint one. All right, so here's my regular Candytuft tree. I always tend to kind of spray the underneath first, just little short sprays. And then once I'm done, I just kind of hit the top. And there, I'm done. Quick and easy trees to fill a forest.
And the process does get quick, because once you keep making them, you get a little faster at them, you find some shortcuts, and pretty soon you can have a whole forest of trees made up within a matter of a few days.
Some of the trees that I paint with the basil, I will plant just like they are to add some variety. However, to about half of them, I also flock them with foliage. And so I prefer the coarse turf light green and the coarse turf medium green. And essentially what I will do, and I'll demonstrate this in a little bit, is I'll take a tree, I will put it in my water and glue mixture upside down and get the tree limbs in there, take the tree out, kind of tap it and twirl it a little bit to get any excess glue off it. And then essentially I will take that tree and the limbs, put it right in here, kind of twirl it a few times, tap it on the side, and then back in the styrofoam to dry for about 24 hours. And so I will demonstrate that so you can get a little variety of this basic background tree using the Candytuft material, but also making them so they don't all look the same. All right. So I'm going to pull this random guy right here, this little tree, and as you can see, I'm kind of submerging the branches in there. And then I usually take it over to the grass area. Figure that's not going to really hurt the lawn a whole lot. Get any of that excess glue off there. And then I will take it and I'm going to make this one a dark turf one. So I'm going to put it in there, twist it around a few times, even shake up the container if you want to. Twist it, and when it comes out, it has some foliage on it. Okay? Any of the little glue bubbles, things like that, it's amazing how once they're just turned upside, or I should say put right in the styrofoam to dry, they basically just disappear. Okay. Some people also hang their trees upside down, like on a clothesline with a clothespin and that. I have found usually just sticking them right in the styrofoam, they tend to dry just fine. So if I do a lighter foliage one, take this one here, same thing, put it in there. Take it over the grass, kind of spin out some of that excess glue on it. And then I'm going to put this one in the light foliage this time. Spin it around, shake it up a little bit. And when I'm done, there's my light foliage one. And so, as you can see, when you put them side by side, I've got a dark, I've got a light, and then if I just take one that is just a natural basil color that I've done nothing, here I've got a couple different varieties of trees, and as you've seen from some of my layout pictures, once they're all clustered together, they blend in really well. They look very nice for background trees, plus they're really inexpensive, which is also a plus too. Okay, about 45 minutes have passed, and here are the trees that I'm just going to leave in the basil floral paint color. I did about 3 rows here that are in the light foliage tuff that I flocked, and then I have about 3 rows here that I did in the darker foliage tuff, and then just a couple of the original Candytuft ones that I didn't get painted. And so they have very long trunks on them, so it gives me plenty of room to hang on to them when I'm painting. I can cut them down when I get ready to plant. Having the brown floral tape kind of eliminates any need for necessarily painting the trunks. I can kind of leave them as is. And as you've seen from some of the clusters of trees I have planted on my railroad, once they're all kind of nestled in, they really kind of bring the scene to life and can fill in an area real well. So Candytuft trees, kind of a neat way to populate your railroad with a lot of trees. Pretty simple to build, and you know, with one bundle of Candytuft, making anywhere from 50 to 75 trees depending on the size of them, definitely seems like I can get a lot of trees for my money. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk with you soon. Thank you. Bye.